And thanks to our friends on the 5, great show. This is a Fox News alert. Welcome to Hannity. Breaking news tonight in the aftermath of the brutal terror attack in Manchester, England, that has killed over 20 people, including children, and injuring dozens more. The UK has now raised its terror threat level to critical. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Monica Crowley, Jay Sekulow, Sarah Carter, John Solomon, Michelle Malkin, all join us tonight with reaction. Also, in a minute, I have a very important message for you, my audience. But first, President Trump is finally confronting evil in our time head-on with moral clarity in the fight to defeat radical Islamic terrorism. American leadership is now needed more than ever, and that is tonight's very important opening monologue. So what we saw take place last night in Manchester, England, is the definition of pure evil in our time. ISIS is now claiming responsibility after a suicide bomber targeted an Ariana Grande concert full of children and teenagers. An 8-year-old girl is among the victims lost in this evil, barbaric terrorist attack. And witnesses are saying that the explosion sprayed bolts and other metal pieces, likely intended to cause the maximum amount of destruction and death. Now tonight, America and the world, you face a choice. We can either roll over, appease, capitulate to this radical and evil ideology that even targets innocent people, including women and young children, like we saw in Manchester, or we can draw a line in the sand and fight back against this evil in our time and defeat this cancer, radical Islamic terrorism, once and for all. Now, President Trump, he's made his choice. He is no longer willing to stand by in face of terror. Instead, he is calling on the world of good people to come together and fight back. And earlier today, the president addressed this act of terrorism from Manchester. Watch this.
So many young, beautiful, innocent people living and enjoying their lives murdered by evil losers in life. I won't call them monsters because they would like that term. They would think that's a great name. I will call them from now on losers because that's what they are. They're losers. And we'll have more of them. But they're losers. Just remember that.
And over the weekend in Saudi Arabia, President Trump gave a historic speech. No apologies, no political correctness, none of the weakness displayed by President Obama over the past 8 years. President Trump leading from the front, identifying what is really at stake, that this is a battle between good and evil. Watch these powerful words.
It's a choice between two futures, and it is a choice America cannot make for you. A better future is only possible if your nations drive out the terrorists and drive out the extremists. Drive them out. Drive them out of your places of worship. Drive them out of your communities. Drive them out of your holy land. And drive them out of this earth.
Muslim nations must be willing to take on the burden if we are going to defeat terrorism and send its wicked ideology into oblivion. The first task in this joint effort is for your nations to deny all territory to the foot soldiers of evil. Every country in the region has an absolute duty to ensure that terrorists find no sanctuary on their soil.
Remember, President Trump said that in Saudi Arabia before what happened in Manchester. The president is now using principled realism, rooted in partnership, not perfection, as he said. The president wasn't lecturing, wasn't talking down to these nations. By the way, they're not easily going to change the way they do things. Instead, in front of 50 Arab leaders, 50 countries, he's calling on them to eradicate the foot soldiers of evil. And he's asking the Arab world to now step up and to do its part and to come together and unite around a common goal, to defeat ISIS and radical Islamic terrorism, evil in our time. That is now needed, now more than ever. Also tonight, The unsolved murder of former DNC staffer Seth Rich continues to get a huge amount of attention. Now, I want to say something. I totally, completely understand how upset, how hard this is on this family, especially over the recent coverage of Seth's death. Now, I have been communicating with them. I got a very heartfelt note. I also sent them a heartfelt note back. I reached out personally today to Seth's brother, Aaron. I expressed my condolences over how hard, how difficult this has been for him and his family. And as I told Aaron, my heart, my soul, my prayers, everything goes out to them in this very difficult time. I'm a father. I know, I don't think I'd ever recover from losing a child or a brother. I honestly don't think I would. I cannot imagine the pain that they are in. And as a father, when I saw the video of the parents online saying they want answers, and I know the brother Aaron started a GoFundMe page, it truly pained me. However, out of respect for the family's wishes for now, I am not discussing this matter at this time. Now let me explain this. There are so many issues here, not the least of which is the Democratic push of their Russia narrative, collusion, Trump-Russia narrative. There's something clearly happening here. The Destroy Trump media, the Democrats, they have been pushing that Russian tin-foil hat conspiracy theory with zero evidence. For example, earlier today on Capitol Hill, former CIA Director John Brennan was asked about Russia collusion. Take a look.
I encountered and am aware of information and intelligence that revealed contacts and interactions between Russian officials and U.S. persons involved in the Trump campaign that I was concerned about because of known Russian efforts to suborn such individuals, and it raised questions in my mind, again, whether or not the Russians were able to gain the cooperation of those individuals. I don't know whether or not such collusion, that's your term, such collusion existed. I don't know. But I know that there was a sufficient basis of information and intelligence that required further investigation by the Bureau to determine whether or not U.S. persons were actively conspiring, colluding with Russian officials.
And you remember back in March, during an interview on Meet the Press, the former Obama Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, he also said no evidence of Russia collusion. Watch this.
We did not include any evidence in our report, and I say our, that's NSA, FBI, and CIA with my office, the Director of National Intelligence, that had anything, that had any reflection of collusion between members of the Trump campaign and the Russians. There was no evidence of that included in our report.
I understand that, but does it exist?
Not to my knowledge.
Now, predictably, Clapper has been changing his tune about what he said in March, but he's not the only person who has come forward and admitted that there is zero evidence of collusion. But yet they keep pushing this narrative in the Destroy Trump media. For example, listen to top Democratic lawmakers. They're saying there's no evidence. Watch this.
Have you seen anything that suggests any collusion between the Russians and the Trump campaign?
Well, there's an awful lot of smoke there, let's put it that way. People that might have said they were involved, to what extent they were involved, to what extent the president might have known about these people or whatever. There's nothing there from that standpoint that we have seen directly linking our president to any of that.
The last time we spoke, Senator, I asked you if you had actually seen evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, and you said to me, and I'm quoting you now, you said, not at this time. Has anything changed since we spoke last?
Well, no, it hasn't.
I know we need to go soon, but just to be clear, there has been no actual evidence yet.
No, it has not been.
Okay. I just want
no, it has not.
Now, in addition to Democrats admitting that they've seen no evidence whatsoever, back in January, while testifying under oath, James Clapper also said no evidence that Russia affected the actual vote tallies. His words, not mine.
First, we cannot say they did not change any vote tallies or anything of that sort.
Yeah, I'm just talking
we have no way of gauging the impact that certainly the intelligence community can't gauge the impact it had on choices the electorate made.
So there's no evidence of collusion. Nothing to suggest that actual votes were changed. Now, of course, these facts have not stopped the Destroy Trump media night after night after night. They have been pushing this tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. It is beyond shameful. It's not rooted in fact. No evidence. No votes impacted. I'm not the one saying it. You just heard it for yourself. Take a look.
Wouldn't it be nice if it was just completely, totally, absolutely impossible to suspect that Vladimir Putin orchestrated what happened in Syria this week so that his friend in the White House could have a big night with missiles and all of the praise he's picked up over the last 24 hours? Wouldn't it be so nice if you couldn't even in your wildest dreams imagine a scenario like that?
I'll say it again. This Russian connection just keeps building, and every time it builds and expands, you have to wonder if Trump himself isn't worried about what's swirling around under the covers.
CNN has learned new details of the FBI investigation into potential links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government.
Specifically, Willie, I think what it means is that a federal judge found that people in Trump's organization were colluding with the Russians.
So we've shown you. No evidence of Russia collusion, no votes changed. The media, Destroy Trump media, has completely misrepresented the facts. I want to say this to you, my loyal audience, which is very important. Please do not interpret what I'm saying tonight to mean anything. Don't read into this. I promise you I am not going to stop doing my job. To the extent of my ability, I am not going to stop trying to find the truth. That's what we do here every single day. That effort is not stopping in any way, shape, matter, or form. I am continuing the work that I promised to do every day for you, and at the proper time, we shall continue and talk a lot more. As for my job here at the Fox News Channel, there is an effort now abound to silence me. Media Matters is attacking my advertising base. That is what we have called on this program liberal fascism, attack, boycott, all in an effort to silence conservatives. I serve at the pleasure of the Fox News Channel, and I am here to do my job every night. I'm under contract, as long as they seem to want me. Coming up, Deputy Assistant to the President, Sebastian Gorka. He'll weigh in on the terror attack targeting children in Manchester. And Monica Crowley and Jay Sekulow, they weigh in. And later, an explosive investigation report by Circa News' Sarah Carter, John Solomon, about how the Obama administration violated your privacy rights for years and only revealed what was happening just days before President Trump was elected. Sarah and John break that news in a disturbing new report with details right here.
So many young, beautiful, innocent people living and enjoying their lives murdered by evil losers in life. I won't call them monsters because they would like that term.
All right, that was President Trump earlier today talking about the terror attack on innocent civilians, young people, last night at a concert in Manchester, England. Now, the president still is on his overseas trip and is continuing his push to eradicate ISIS and violent Islamic extremists across the world. Joining us now with reaction, Deputy Assistant to the President, and that is Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Gorka, good to see you. First, your reaction to that, and then I want to talk about a speech from Saudi Arabia on Saturday.
Well, good evening, Sean. First things first, the language the president used is incredibly important. He called them evil losers. Why? Number one, because this is a war with evil. It's not people who are unemployed or who are suffering political disenfranchisement. This is evil walking the earth that must be obliterated. Secondly, he said, we're not going to call them monsters. Why? Because monsters are frightening. Monsters are powerful. These people are cowards, nothing less. Evil cowards. And as the president said, they will be obliterated.
Let me go to what I played in the last block, Dr. Gorka, because I think that by far the single defining speech by an American president addressing evil in our time. Now, we lost in the last century 100 million human souls. The gulags, Stalin, Russia, Nazism, fascism, Imperial Japan, the killing fields, Cambodia, 100 million souls. And let me just play some of Donald Trump from his speech.
A better future is only possible if your nations drive out the terrorists and drive out the extremists. Drive them out. Drive them out.
Some of the most powerful language identifying evil in our time. That drive them out, extraordinarily powerful. I know the Trump, Russia, conspiracy, media, destroy Trump media, that's all they've been focused on. But they've missed one of the biggest moments with an American president and 50 leaders in the Arab world that has ever occurred in history. Your reaction?
The president made history. Not only is the first president to go to the Wailing Wall with his Jewish son-in-law, with his Jewish daughter. This is a man who rekindled, who channeled Ronald Reagan's evil empire speech. Sean, remember that the 20th century was the story of evil ideologies threatening the whole of Western civilization, and it took America to defeat them. We defeated, with our friends, with our allies, the Nazis. We defeated, thanks to Ronald Reagan, thanks to Margaret Thatcher, thanks to St. John Paul II, the Soviet Union. But what was the key moment? The key moment was in 1987 when the president stood up and said, "Tear down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev," when he called the Soviet Union an evil empire. The president today went into the heart of this region, went to the land of Mecca and Medina and said, "Look, we have a problem. You have to help us. You have to get the terrorists out of your places of worship, out of your communities." He showed leadership. We're not going to solve your problems for you, but we face an evil threat, a threat that kills 8-year-old girls at pop concerts. Leadership is back, and we are going to defeat this threat just as we defeated the Nazis, just as we defeated the Soviet Union.
You know, I love when he said, terrorists do not worship God. They worship death. What was so evil about Manchester, and by the way, when I interviewed Benjamin Netanyahu the time before, the last time I was just in Israel, he said to me, he talked about the great Satan, America, the little Satan, Israel, and I talked about what they have experienced and the terror that they face every day. And he warned that this is a preview of coming attractions. We see it in Chattanooga, San Bernardino, Fort Hood, the Pulse nightclub, the Sarnav brothers, the Boston bombing. If we don't get a hold of this, we're talking about the potential of so many more people dying. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, I shudder to think of the human catastrophe that could take place. I don't think the left in this country understands, as they fight the president on vetting of people that come from cultures that clash with ours, clash of civilization, grow up under Sharia that persecutes women, gays, lesbians, Christians, and Jews. They don't get it. Why do they not get it?
Sean, I can't apologize for people who just ignore reality. The Jewish community, the people of Israel, they are literally the canaries in the coal mine. Because remember, it starts with the Jews, but it never ends with the Jews. Just as in the death camps during the Nazi horrors of World War II. The fact is, what Israel has been suffering for decades is only now being appreciated by people around the world who are not Jewish. So why the left doesn't understand? Because they see us as the problem. Why was there an apology tour? Why was the Muslim Brotherhood in the front row of President Obama's speech at the Al-Azhar? Because they denied reality. They said it's about jobs for jihadis and economics and lack of education. No, it's about totalitarianism. That's the threat to America.
Dr. Gorka, we have an opportunity to create an alliance that is unprecedented. The Saudis, the Israelis, the Egyptians, Jordanians, the Emirates, and others. But they have now got to step up. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. When we come back, more reaction to the horrific terror attack in Manchester. Monica Crowley, Jay Sekulow are here. Also, Sarah Carter, John Solomon, Circa News, with an explosive new report about how the Obama administration has violated your privacy rights for years and only revealed what was happening just days before President Trump was elected. They'll be here with breaking details, and also tonight.
I repeat again that we must drive out the terrorists and the extremists from our midst. Obliterate this evil ideology.
In the wake of yesterday's deadly terror attack in Manchester, President Trump continues his push to defeat terrorism. Michelle Malkin is here to weigh in tonight. Welcome back to Hannity. And last night, as we began getting initial information on the tragic terror attack in Manchester, the alt-left media, well, they seem reluctant to admit that it could be terror-related. Instead, they warn their audiences about racing to conclusions. Over there on MSNBC, Rachel Maddow was telling her viewers that in a similar case, well, initial reports were conflicting or did not bear out over time. Then you had over at CNN, Anderson Cooper, quote, "There is probably more that we don't know." And by the way, we should all be reasonable. Joining us with reaction from the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow, by the way, who's done legal work for me in the past, and conservative commentator Monica Crowley. Yeah, I think we should be cautious, but I'd say the overwhelming vast majority of times, Jay, it turns out to be terror, doesn't it? Radical Islamic terror.
It does, and this president's changed the paradigm. President Obama operated under the assumption that it wasn't terrorism and then proved that it is. Where I think right now you've got is when you have a situation that fits a particular fact pattern, which unfortunately last night did, you start with the proposition, which the UK authorities did, by the way, that it's a terrorist incident. They suspect it's a terrorist incident, and then if it's not, well, prove that it's not okay. But it's horrible regardless. But in this particular case, it had all the hallmarks of an ISIS attack, is what they've been calling for, seeking out the targets. That's what they've been calling it, soft targets. And, of course, the difference here was the nature of the explosion. If this was, as it seems to be, if it was one explosion, in other words, one device, it was a device that created a tremendous amount of carnage. And that shows a level of sophistication. That means that we're bomb makers. And, again, my thoughts and prayers and condolences to the families and the victims that are suffering even today.
Yeah, and you can't say it enough. I mean, it's so painful. Yeah. I have a daughter, and her friends, they like girls like Ariana Grande, and for a period she loved Taylor Swift and loves her, and they want to go to concerts. Do we now have to think, oh, there's going to be an extremist with shrapnel bombs that, if God forbid, that actually got inside the stadium? I shudder to think of the misery and evil.
Well, this is the reality in which we live. We've been living with this reality now in the United States, particularly in the West, since 9/11. But even before that, Osama bin Laden declared war on the United States in the 1990s, and here we are. This is our reality. Fortunately, now we have a president, we have leadership that understands the true nature of the threat, is willing to define it publicly, and is willing to fight it. This president has liberated the U.S. military so that they don't have to go through all of these bureaucratic nightmare channels in order to get the okay to bomb ISIS sites, for example, sites in Afghanistan, the enemy sites across the Middle East and across the world, where we know the enemy is launching attacks and staging recruiting and training camps, etc. We finally have an American commander-in-chief who is committed to the fight, understands the true nature of the enemy, and is willing to tell the truth about it.
Jay, I gotta keep going back to these words. I mean, drive them out. Drive them out. Yeah. This is a battle between good and evil. For all the time, Bibi Netanyahu has been the lone adult with moral clarity on the world stage. Thankfully, now he has a partner. I was also very impressed with the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, and her handling of this and her statement. I actually see an emerging potential for a coalition that nobody ever dreamed of before. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And, you know, in England, of course, this evening they've had to raise the threat level to imminent, which means they're expecting, based on their intelligence, something imminent. I mean, that's the highest of highest levels. But there's another aspect of what the president said here that I think is so critical. Not only did he say drive them out, he gave specific places where you have to drive them out. Drive them out of your houses of worship. That means inside the mosque. When you see this, you have to drive it out. Drive it out from your communities. When you're in your communities and someone is doing things that are inappropriate, building a bomb, having discussions that you think show radicalization, you've got to call them out. Build them, get them out of your towns, get them out of your cities, get them off the earth. This is the approach you have to take, but it starts with the community itself. Policing. I mean, the policing has to start within the community. This
you
is
wrote
that
one
serious.
of the first books, Jay, on ISIS, so
Yep.
I really take what you're saying here to heart, and Sebastian Gorka and others. You want to say, Monica?
Yep.
Yeah, look, this is the global jihad. This is not
Caliphate.
Yes, this
Convert or
is not
die.
a big mystery. So the clips you were talking about last night from some on the left in the media, and they want to take the time. I understand being cautious when you're covering breaking news, but the idea that somehow this is a mystery, and for everybody to come out and say, I am shocked, I'm surprised. Of course, this is a horrific tragedy, but this is where we are. We are in an existential war for Western civilization. The jihadis make no qualms about telling us exactly who they are, what they believe, and what they intend to do. We choose in the West not to listen, not to believe them, and yet they keep attacking us and they keep telling us the truth.
Some don't believe it.
A lot of people in the West want to tune
Nigel
it down.
Farage told me today, I've been trying to tell you what has happened
I
here.
tried to tell you that is exactly
and it's
right.
coming. He goes, please listen.
Well,
he
it's
loves
here.
this. He loves America
It's
as
here.
a Brit.
It's across Western Europe. It is here in the United States. We've experienced a number of very tragic mass casualty attacks. It is here, and that's why, thank God, we finally have leadership that's willing to take the fight exactly to the enemy and call it what it is.
Well said, both of you. When we come back, an investigative report. Sarah Carter, John Solomon, CircaNews.com. A major breaking story tonight about how the Obama administration has violated your privacy rights for years. They'll explain. And also tonight.
I repeat again that we must drive out the terrorists and the extremists from our midst. Obliterate this evil ideology.
The president stays strong today in Jerusalem, renewing his push to eradicate ISIS and violent Islamic extremism, especially in the wake of yesterday's deadly terror attack in Manchester. Michelle Malkin is here to weigh in tonight. Welcome back to Hannity. Now, former CIA director under President Obama, John Brennan, he testified on Capitol Hill earlier today as part of the investigation into whether Russia interfered in our 2016 presidential election. Now, this comes as a new explosive report by Circa News. John Solomon and Sarah Carter details how an Obama intelligence agency violated Americans' privacy for years and then secretly disclosed this at a closed-door hearing just days before President Donald Trump was elected. And today, during his congressional testimony, well, Brennan had this to say about whether or not he personally requested to have Americans' names unmasked. Watch this.
We're talking about prohibitions that you place on yourself with respect to identifying U.S. persons as part of our surveillance programs, right?
That's correct.
All right.
Yes.
And you just cited some of the very important reasons that we do that, and I would assume that there is a process, a protocol under which the intelligence community goes through if they seek to unmask a U.S. person's name.
That's correct.
Have you ever requested that a U.S. person's name be unmasked?
Yes, I have.
Joining us now with the breaking report from Circa News, Sarah Carter and John Solomon. Sarah, let's start with you. Tell us about this breaking news report, and a lot more to come tomorrow, as I understand it.
Yes, Sean. What we know is this. We just broke this story yesterday, was that the CIA is the largest consumer of unmasking Americans of any agency that we know right now. We can't give you exact numbers because those are classified, but we know that the majority of unmasking of Americans occurred with the CIA. What's even more interesting about that is that, you know, under the CIA's own purview, I mean, since 1947, their charter is not to spy on Americans. So the question is, why are they doing this? What are they looking at? And for what purposes? What John and I are also breaking is the fact that we know that the NSA under Obama violated the privacy protections when they were searching, actually, the databases at the NSA. So nobody knew this until we were able to get our hands on these documents, John and I, and these are from the FISA courts. And what happened was Obama last fall